The digital media landscape doesn't need more walls. It needs clarity, unlimited intelligence across competitors, audiences, inventory, and data, all in one place. Ask it anything and uncover the drivers behind performance. Path to conversion reporting, media mix modeling, intelligence that adapts in real time with clear revenue impact. Elevate your intelligence platform.
Hey everyone, I'm David Berkowitz with Marketecture Media's AI Marketers Guild, and I'm here for a very special edition of AI Insiders with our partners at AI Digital, who hopefully, if you haven't yet, you'll get to meet at one of the many Marketecture events. And so it's been really fun collaborating with this whole team here. We're going to talk about the state of AI in agencies, and as an agency alum, a recovering agency exec, perhaps, then I'm especially excited to learn from this crew here. And we'll have David Mainiero kick it off. And just want to give a warm welcome to this team and look forward to all of your questions and comments along the way. I know the AI Digital team's really excited to hear from you. So David, all yours.
Thanks, David. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Mainiero. I'm the Chief AI Officer at AI Digital, and I lead one of our initiatives that we call AI Digital Labs, which is our dedicated AI transformation practice for agencies and brands. Joining me is Boris, who's the head of our AI Digital Labs incubator. Boris came to us from McKinsey by way of Publicis, and he's going to show you a few of the tools that we've shipped into live client engagements in just the past couple of weeks. We have sort of a different model for how we approach this, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But today's session is called The State of AI in Agencies, Hard Data, Real Tools, and What Actually Works. We're going to do a few things in the next 45 minutes or so, and then open up for questions for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to walk you through findings from our recent benchmark survey. Over 100 agency and brand side leaders were the respondents. And to be honest up front, we built our own survey because the ones we were seeing from the industry, what we were hearing in conferences, on stages, and everyone's LinkedIn posts about how wonderfully agentic they were, we had a bit of skepticism about the answers versus what we were seeing on the ground. And we also thought some of these surveys asked the wrong questions. Like, does your agency use AI, or how AI ready are you, are too vague, and they're meaningless. You know, when they can capture a response like someone used ChatGPT to write an email once versus, you know, someone has actually built a bespoke agent that is taking on meaningful work that used to be done by some of the team. So we tried to focus on operational questions. And after we go through that data and some of the high level findings of that, Boris is going to show you what the other side of that data looks like, which are the real tools, real inputs, real outputs, what folks are doing. And third, we're going to have a bit more of a like panel type discussion with Boris because he's on the ground with me working with agency leaders on what AI transformation looks like for a particular agency or a particular brand. We see all sorts of flavors, sizes of what people are looking for, what people think transformation means, what people are doing without help, and where the biggest kind of areas of need are. The conversation that we have with leadership teams every week, and what I imagine might resonate with many of you, is there's this comic strip that I think I initially found on LinkedIn, but I really love it because it captures a lot of what we see around AI, which is, you know, and it could be CEOs, it could be a board, it could be a leadership team, but it's this idea of, wow, I've had this epiphany moment, or I read something, or I heard, you know, Google say they're laying off 30% of their technical staff or something as a result of AI innovation. Wow, is there something we're missing? You know, why is that not something available to us? What's going on? And that leads to this impulse to just jump right into an adapt or die mentality. It's like, well, okay, what do we want? Well, we want AI, and what's it going to do? We don't really know, but we want it right now. Definitely know that we want it right now. And this is kind of an ethos that describes where a lot of the industry has been sitting for the past year or two, and frankly, many other industries as well. And what AI Digital Labs does is exists in that gap of trying to turn this energy, this excitement, ambition into action, awareness, adoption, advantage. So we have our dedicated transformation practice that works across these three pillars. And the reason we built labs is simple. Even as our core kind of media business and working as an operating partner to agencies and brands, this idea is that AI is top of mind for everyone. It's what they need a real solve for, and it's often what they falls by the wayside as they have the least bandwidth for some transformation initiative while they're busy with their day jobs, keeping the lights on. And we see this across some of the biggest enterprises in the world, right? OpenAI announced their DeployCo acquisition/investment a few weeks ago. Prior to that, they had their Frontier Alliance, which was private equity dedicated towards funding things like that. They purchased Tomorrow AI, which brought them, I think, 1,500 forward deployed AI engineers. You have Anthropic's Claude Partner Network. All these are dedicated to deploying engineering into the Fortune 100. And the idea is simple for them because it's, wow, we need people to use more of our tokens and more of our API and more subscriptions. How do people don't get it beyond signing up for enterprise subscriptions for $20, $40 a month. We're telling them go revamp your financial function or your marketing function, but they're not doing it for all the different ways we know are possible. How do we accelerate that? Well, you spend enough money, we'll give you some of our best engineers and they'll help you figure it out consultatively and also build for you. That's the promise. We'll see how that exactly takes shape. But certainly this is happening at the Fortune 100 and 500 level, but almost nobody is doing that for the rest of us, for the mid-market, for smaller businesses, for non-public companies. And we built labs to fill that gap for the mid-market. The agencies and brands who don't have a 40-engineer AI task force sitting in-house, they're not going to go pay Boris when he was at McKinsey $1 million to do a neuromarketing study, and frankly, probably aren't going to build truly proprietary technology, even for a couple $100,000. It's just the value proposition is not quite clear. So how we're structured to do that work is kind of three connected tracks. We have AI strategy and advisory. And I'm speaking about us, but really this is how I think really any transformation should work. I'm a bit biased because I built it this way. But this is not supposed to be an infomercial for us. It's more of a framework for thinking about transformation. And that first pillar is AI strategy and advisory, right? So your C-suite needs to align on ambition, risk, investment levels. That's roadmaps and governance frameworks and really harder conversations about what you're actually willing to bet on, how you want to change your go-to-market messaging, not just kind of repackaging existing capabilities as AI, not just saying in response to RFPs, we have more efficiency and better outcomes, truly showing rather than telling how you are advancing in this new era. Training and upskilling is an important part of that as well. That's the second kind of pillar. Role-specific boot camps for strategists, creatives, media analytics, account teams, not generic AI training. I think there are fantastic resources available online, like self-paced learning from Anthropic, OpenAI, all over YouTube, paid programs, free programs. But really what you need is fluency by role, and you need folks to have their hands on keyboards. I can't tell you how many rooms, how many trainings I've been in where people will repeat back to me all the same things and agree with me on a lot of how AI should work or how tools can unlock things for them. But until they literally, I've had, this happened to me as well. It's like I talked about vibe coding before I'd ever done it. And the first time I did it a few years ago, I was just still shocked at what I could accomplish just by kind of barking commands at my screen in voice mode and seeing what happened. And so I call that this like epiphany delivering function, which is quite arrogant, but really the person who delivers the epiphany is the person with the hands on keyboard. And so we've designed our training to scale that one-to-one, what would be one-to-one instruction, as if I or someone else was kind of looking over your shoulder, coaching you on how to use the tool, because that's really how people learn, particularly adults and organizations. It's not through studying like we did when we were in school. It's through hands-on, using the tools for tasks that matter. And then the last component is our forward deployed AI engineering, custom agents, workflow redesigns, tool builds. We now build in the same time frame that it used to take us to scope whether or not it was worth the effort. And so we skip that step. Obviously, we have a bit of a forcing function and funnel for making sure we're not wasting our time, but that's Boris's practice, and that's what he's going to show you about in the incubator. So the strategy informs the training unlocks the build, the tracks all compound with each other. One word of caution is that often people see these things as chronological, and sort of they are, but you can get yourself easily in a trap if you're like, well, we need all of our governance policies, all of our contracts updated, all of our everyone needs to have tool access and to all these tools, and we need to figure out what goes in the new deck. If you take that attitude, you're not going to get anything done with AI. AI is moving way too fast, way faster than really any previous tech wave that I can remember or have studied. And the kind of biggest risk there is inaction. So moving on to some of the survey results. We surveyed, as a reminder, about 100 agencies and brands with these operational questions. The findings became the basis of a white paper that we called Leaders, Laggards, and the Walking Dead. Just briefly explaining those buckets, leaders are the kind of the green band that you see. About 16% of agencies that say they have AI embedded across teams, KPIs, battle-tested stories to tell clients, and probably a nice bow to put on a go-to-market message about it. The laggards are about 6%. Frankly, I think they're probably a little more than this, but they have no AI activity at all, and they're being honest about it. They're probably the easiest to spot and probably the easiest to help because they know they're behind, and the first step is admitting it. But really, the biggest chunk is in the middle, kind of like a bell curve, and that's what I call the Walking Dead. It's kind of 2/3 of the field. They're reported things like, oh, we're drafting a roadmap, we're running ad hoc experiments, we're forming committees, we've got some tools that we're piloting, we've made a few decks. It's not that I don't say this to disparage that effort. That's all great. But those folks have been doing this for 2 years. And if you imagine writing these, I didn't think back to like writing resumes, since like you want your action verbs on top. But if you looked at your action verbs of drafting a roadmap, running ad hoc experiments, and you went into a job interview, people are like, that's great that you were doing all those things, but what resulted from them? What are the metrics that you can point to? How did you measure success? And so the Walking Dead aren't ignoring AI. They're checking the box, right? And it's not some like conspiracy. They just are busy. They went to a webinar like today's. They've got a Notion page or a kind of Google Drive folder. A lot of their team uses ChatGPT for first drafts or to check kind of do a super spell check type thing. But nothing about how the work actually gets done in those agencies has really changed. And so if you ask the average agency CEO or president where they are, they're likely to tell you they're further along than they actually are. So keep that in mind when you look at these stats. The roadmap feels like progress. The pilot feels like progress. The committee feels like progress, but oftentimes it's an obstacle. None of it actually moves the work. And so maturity is not having opinions about AI at this stage that we're at now. It's about embedding it into workflows, having accountable owners, and measurable outcomes. A good consultant friend of mine told me that what gets measured gets managed. And we'll show you some of the stats on that in a minute. But by that standard, 66% of agencies have nothing yet because they're measuring nothing. So 2 numbers to look at kind of side by side here. Question 1 is how critical is having advanced AI capabilities to staying competitive? The average answer was an 8.1 out of 10. One thing that I didn't show here was if you asked how important AI is to an agency's competitive success in the next 3 to 4 years, it was like a 9.4 out of 10 or something. So quite a bit of confidence. But question 2, how confident do you feel answering clients' questions about AI? That's a 5.8. And that might seem like, oh, 2.3 points, it's small. That's a huge gap. And frankly, I think people are giving themselves a little more credit in some of these answers, is there's a bit of a self-selection bias there. But this is what I call a kind of say-do chasm or a confidence gap. And AI is existential. You can't articulate why, and not what you can't articulate what you're doing about it. 83.9% said they cannot articulate a unique or differentiating AI story. 57% say they have talking points, but nothing unique. And so the answer, even though it might be right to that RFP question or client question of like, hey, what are you doing with AI? It just fumbles into something that sounds like everybody else's. And it's become table stakes at this point. So that doesn't mean you don't need to get your table stakes, but you need to also move beyond that and not be satisfied with just that. So if your AI story is like a good heuristic to think about, if it could be copy and pasted onto your closest competitor's website without changing really a word, it's not a differentiator. And that's the table stakes that we're talking about. One thing that's really, really important, as everyone's so focused on the technology, I do this in my title that I made up is a new title. Chief AI Officer didn't really exist before. And it's interesting because I was never qualified to be a CTO in 5 years ago. I'm not personally a coder. I'm literate in these systems, but I could never fully build in the past. In fact, I like to tell the story of how many times in my career I was like, wow, I wish I, quit my job and went to one of these coding boot camps for 6 months or 12 months and learned to be a coder. And I'm so glad I didn't do that, because now I am a coder because I speak English. And most leaders, if you look at it and ask them what's blocking AI adoption, the answer is really not budget, and it's really not technology. The technology is flying out of the sky into our laps at a pace faster than we can all handle. And the data says that it's not too. So it's not like a secret here. The number one barrier by a pretty wide margin, I think 61%, is this skills gap. Number two, 52%, and I think I'm on the wrong slide here. Well, that's all right. 52% is that they're too busy with daily client work. So it's kind of this like side project trap. Budget and technology, they're on the list, but they're way further down. So when you have more technology than you know what to do with, and it's fairly inexpensive, it's a leadership and prioritization problem dressed up as a technology problem. If we think about kind of the curve here, and think about that frontier of AI adoption, I don't know if you could see my mouse, but the green line here, where it starts to rise in the middle, maybe 18 months, 24 months away, and you see it starting after kind of that 6 months. It's like agencies waiting versus agencies embracing AI. You're not seeing an enormous difference right now in competitive results. It's kind of like a duck paddling furiously under the surface, and it looks pretty calm up top. But what you're going to start to see is a chasm emerge, and it'll grow over time, because the ones that are getting the right footwork in place, the ones that are building the data foundation, the readiness, in their organization for an agent to be able to work properly, those are the ones that, when these kind of gradually then suddenly leaps in technology happen, like they seem to every 3 weeks, they're going to be ready. They're not going to have to go back and do all this kind of legwork. And so this shaded area, if you look at it just at the green curve, you're like, oh my God, how do I keep up with this line? This is how it keeps rising before it plateaus. I don't think we're anywhere near a plateau, but it's all that could fit on the slide. And if you just think about the stats I showed you, the agencies waiting, and maybe the pace of organizational adoption is like slightly more sloping upward, but there's still this huge gap in this area. And that's your opportunity gap. That is, you just need to do more, a little bit better than the rest of your competition, and you're going to seize an enormous, enormous advantage. But every month you wait, the cost to close that gap will creep up and eventually jump up. And that is kind of a catch-up tax scenario you don't want to see yourselves in. So I want to put a finer point on that and walk briefly through some of the excuses I see the most. And I don't love to call them excuses. They're kind of justifications. They're not made in bad faith, but there is a brutal reality to them. The first, I hear a lot, and I'm also a lawyer, and I worked in legal AI for a couple of years. And so I worked with Meta and Google and CrowdStrike and Bank of New York and Ford Motor Company, a lot of Fortune 100 companies across industries, highly regulated or not, GlaxoSmithKline as well, Blackstone. But I'd heard, these are things I heard early on, like, oh, we can't use AI because of client confidentiality. 30% of agencies, as you saw, have no policies in place, right? Enterprise safe, non-training models exist. They're quite abundant. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of New York, what you'd think of would be slow moving institutions coming to information security and approval of risky things. They figured this stuff out like 3 years ago. Very simple policies. We don't need to break our brains thinking about new frameworks for this. We've been using SaaS tools for however many years. And it's like when I hear a question like, well, how do you make sure your AI tool doesn't do X, Y, and Z? The answer is simple. It's like it doesn't train any model and there's zero data retention. Those are the two things that would make it different from your Salesforce instance or your Bank of America instance. And so I still get questions like, how do you know, though, when you run something through this tool you use that it's not mixing with other client data? It's like, well, you don't ask Google that question about how your Gmails don't mix with someone else's. You don't ask Bank of America that question, how they're not just mixing up your financial data with someone else's. So I'm not to say there aren't unique privacy concerns and other things to deal with here, but they are surmountable and this should not be an obstacle. We're too busy with client work, I think, is the most realistic justification. 52% of respondents cited this. My response would be that this is like saying you're too busy rowing to notice your boat has a motor, and you don't want to be in that position. There's a bit of a chicken and egg, and you got to just step in and embrace it, or you're going to find yourself in a much more dire situation with the catch-up tax that we described. The third is unclear ROI. I'm least impressed by this excuse because if I told you 5 years ago, hey, you can have an army of PhD candidates and professors, experts in each of their respective subjects, they'll work for you for 24 hours. You just need to set them up right and kind of, you don't even need to be nice to them and they'll never complain. It'll be $20 a month. You would tell me I was crazy, but now it's reality. And people are saying, you know what, for our 20 people, that $30 a month subscription or $20 a month subscription, I just don't know if I see the ROI. And it's like, well, it's not the I that's the problem there. It's the R. You need to make sure there's return because the investment is negligible to nothing. There are a lot of agencies. There's an Andre Karpathy tweet a couple of weeks ago where he said this, like, there's almost people talking past each other in these two groups. There's this idea that one group is like, oh, I tried the free version of ChatGPT, or I tried it a year and a half ago, and I remember it hallucinated, or it did X, Y, and Z, or it put 6 fingers on David's hand in his AI avatar. And they just kind of write it off there. It's like a safe space to say, oh, you know what, like it's not there yet, so I don't need to pay attention. Let me wait and see. No training, no workflow integration, no measurement, right? That's just kind of like a vibe check that failed or maybe didn't fail. But there's another group that is using it in fields like coding or in marketing or in legal, which is actually Anthropic released as one of the biggest use cases of Claude Cowork. They're seeing it's quite a bit more than an experiment, being able to do quite a prodigious amount of work that was done exclusively in the ambit of like humans in the past. And so the idea that there's also this idea of like clients don't want it. I don't really believe that. I think that is more of a function of client anxiety about how you are using it because you are not conveying confidence in how you talk about it. At least that's been my experience. Clients are asking about it in pitches. They want an AI-powered you. In 99% of cases, this is opportunity, I think, masquerading as objection. And there's really no time like the present. So the way that I see this working, and this is how we do it at AI Digital, but again, this is a framework I think most should use. There are kind of two tracks, right? It's like, well, how do I do this, David? you tell me I need to train all my people, and we need to invest in these tools, and we need to get our data ready and organized, and we need to be user builders and get some of these things done. That takes time. Organizational change takes time. Transformation, learning new technology and ways of working takes time. There's no shortcut to that. And so building that muscle, that organizational capability is going to pay dividends, but you have to invest in it, and it's going to take years. And it is a constant learning process, because it's not like the AI labs are kind of slowing down to wait for us all to catch up. But in the meantime, I think back to that CEO meme. It's like, oh, we need AI now. I don't know what it is, but we need it, and we need great results from it. That's what AI Digital, our core business, is geared around as an operating partner for agencies and brands. Like, you guys know how to use AI great, so do it for us. Help us get the results that we're talking about. Help us have kind of cold start activation packs to talk about how we're using AI in partnership with you, white labeled. But you need both tracks in parallel, and then ultimately they converge. It's kind of like a build, operate, transfer model in the past. It's capability building and immediate impact in parallel to try to have your cake and eat it too. So our AI incubator program, which Boris is going to share more about in a minute, is this idea that when we have client conversations and we say, okay, what do you want to build? They're not really, I mean, usually there are some great ideas that come out of it, but it's not like they jump off the tongue. And so, and often when we kind of think about these use cases, there's quite a bit of commonality in those use cases. And so our approach has been, okay, let's just build them. Like, stop, like the quickest way to scope, to learn, to iterate, build a prototype in a day or two, show the client, start to play around with it, and then build it into either scrap it or build it into something that's more useful. And this approach has beget probably 20 tools by now, Boris. And this is just in the past 2 months or so. And so it's kind of a constant shipping cadence. This also informs our own flagship technology, which is Elevate, and also our what we can do in our forward deployed AI engineering for partners as well. But a lot of it is based on this incubation work. And so these are a couple of examples of tools we've built. Not all of them are connected. In fact, most of them are not really connected to what we sell in our core business. They are meant to help agencies and to help them do things that are we know clients are asking about because they're asking us. So what Boris is about to show, we built because a lot of folks were asking us about how to rank better in AI engines. And this is not a fully unique product, right? There's SEMrush, there's Profound, there's Scrunch. A lot of companies saying they are AEO kind of experts. There are a few key differences in how I think a software subscription model doesn't quite suit that. But Boris, why don't you tell them kind of how we built this?
That's a very interesting question. The whole idea came from our agency partners, of course. Like, how would I know what my clients' clients are seeing when they search? And the part where it was only SEO and paid ads that you can see in Google already passed. Half of the people out there searching for AI services. That's how the idea came in. And to make the tool most helpful, the core idea behind it was to bring actionable outputs, not just figures, not just measurement of what's your share of model, but what you actually need to do to improve it as a client.
And that's a bit of an inexact science right now, right, Boris? Like, I think a lot of people can identify how you are ranking in a particular AI tool. We'll talk about some of the gaps in a moment of some of the tools we see on the market, but the what do I do about these findings is a bit in flux, isn't it? In terms
Absolutely.
of how it differs from traditional SEO.
Absolutely. Even with SEO, you never know what under the hood of your Google engine. But with AI surfaces, it goes way further. Each surface prioritizes different things. Models change constantly. And what you need to do to understand that, you need to track their research papers, you need to track changes on how your benchmarking presence changes depending on your actions you've made. And that's a constant cat and mouse game to run faster than everybody else to understand how exactly AI decides what to show you.
So why don't you show how you prompt this tool, Boris, and run through a little bit of the workflow of what that might look like. And then I wanted to say, I noticed you have like multiple ChatGPT icons, multiple Google versus Gemini icons. Why do you have repetitive ones there?
Oh, absolutely. So let's start with a simple walkthrough of how do you interact with AI tools via chat. For example, I want to know more about my favorite product, Coca-Cola Zero. So let's see how we can diagnose how our AI engines talk about it. So our orchestrator will ask you, should we look into soft drinks or more precisely in sugar-free sodas? What's the best URL to understand where those references would lead, and so on and so forth. So let's say sugar-free sodas, and keep that landing page default all else. And as you can see, controls at the bottom. And that is very important thing, what David just mentioned. We need to pick what the agents we actually prioritize for and what engines are interesting for us. For example, if you're building a B2B product that is probably will not need to be surfaced in a free version of ChatGPT, you don't need to score it. So your report will run faster, and you will not have any cluttered results out there. And let me run the full version. And you, of course, pick the number of queries you want to run. So
just to address one of the comments I see in the chat about it being, someone said that with agentic coding, anyone could code up a dashboard like this. Well, first of all, that's sort of the point, that you can build things extremely quickly, but I would caution that this is not a dashboard. This is something connected to about 15 different APIs, and has the core of it is the logic that goes behind it, which gets updated constantly. And so the idea is, because something's in an exact science does not mean that we do not try to measure it and try to bring some rigor to it. There are certainly brands who are improving their AI optimization in these results, and you have two choices. You can ignore it and say, oh, I hope this works for me, or you can try to improve it. So I agree that anyone selling this as a panacea is selling a bit of a pipe dream, but understanding exactly what each model says, what the difference in your customer response from the ChatGPT free version, or even Gemini versus Google AI overviews, it's important to understand how you're seeing yourself come up in these surfaces.
As you can see,
just for the sake of speed, do you want to just pull up
yes,
one of the existing ones?
Yes, as you can see, it runs the queries on the line, so you can actually see how it's built, how it builds. But let's see. Let's look at the already finalized report here. So what you can actually see at the surface, it of course shows you what's your share of model. It will show you what's the sentiment. Is it more positive or negative? Are you surfacing at the top of the recommendations list and so on? But when you go deeper, and that is something not every AI optimization engine does there on the market, it will show you how you are present in, let's say, comparative intents. So please compare me soft drinks, or negative, like what shouldn't I pick, and so on. Then it will also compare how engines between each other rank you and why. Give you all the quotes. That's an easy part. You can look through intent metrics and see what engine, what intent performs better or worse, and go deeper into each engine we are looking at with defined signals that build this engine specifically for you. For example, if we are looking at Gemini, what's your presence on review platforms and how you scored there? What's your presence on page evidence density? And very specific ones for each specific engine, and that's where engine specificity comes in. For example, YouTube presence is more important for Gemini than for Claude. Therefore, it will be weighted higher in the overall result. And something that no other platform does right now is the details on our priority actions that you need to do to actually make it work. And here you can see it's not just a recommendation, do more Reddit posts, or post something on YouTube. It gives you the exact list of channels, of Reddit candidates, of podcasts, or people you need to contact to do that. On your content, on your web pages and landing pages, it will give you examples of rewrites you can implement right away, and so on and so forth, including more or less technical things that you can do with your with all your surfaces, not just your website or your social media.
And Boris, can you? I think there are folks who want to see things beyond the AEO tools. Can you pull up competitor campaign review or synthetic focus group? So while you're pulling that up, there are a couple questions like how this differs from specific platforms. I'm not going to address that right now, but I'll try to answer in the chat. Generally, we're not trying to replace, we're not a software company, right? We're not trying to replace a Claude or a particular like agent harness. The idea is that these are products, these are things that were built very quickly, very robustly, and in response to particular client asks. And these are just examples of dozens of other tools that we have in this infrastructure and this suite. So we're not trying to say we're the best generative engine optimizers out there. We're trying to show the art of the possible here, and how far you can get with some of this work. And I do think, by the way, these do stack up quite favorably to the ones that people are charging $1,000 a month for, and we charge nothing for it. But one of the answers to the questions was what questions are being asked of the model. The way that AI queries work is if you type in whatever your prompt is, gets broken down by usually a reasoning model function or thinking model, broken down into hundreds of subqueries. Those subqueries are then run in actual searches. So if you actually look at your thinking trace in an AI tool, you'll see some of this happen. If you look at your GA dashboard, you can see kind of any keyword query that's above 75 characters. It's probably not a keyword written by a human. It's a subquery written that's prompted by an AI. And so you can often reverse engineer the types of things people are looking for there. But Boris, go ahead and show competitor campaign review.
Yep. That's why this tool is specifically interesting. Last week on a conference, people asked, what prototype you can build, and we build it. What it specifically does, it looks at your marketing spend and your specific campaigns and benchmarks you versus your peer group. And most important thing, not just peer group of brands that compare to you, like Coca-Cola to Pepsi. It looks at on the product level of a sub-brand that you're looking for. So, for example, if you're looking for financial services category is huge. But if you're looking for specifically a mortgage in financial services, it will show you competitors that are prominent specifically in that area. It can show you what's your share of voice there, what's your share of spend, and how you rank versus your competitors. And then you can look at the most performing campaigns out there on the market with specific creatives behind them. And if you want to go deeper, you can go and look at, sorry, it's a bit slow for me. If you, for example, look at the specific creatives there, you can go what Pepsi does in CTV, in video, and you can see specifically what they do there. It ranks your campaigns on the competitor campaigns on the metrics. It can show you the full matrix of spend across your peer group. One interesting feature, it also shows you your publishers list and how your peers are spending across publishers, and most importantly, that is something very niche to programmatic, where specifically and marketing overall, where specifically they're spending and what inventory is contested and what inventory is exclusive. And it also scrapes landing pages that you can where those campaigns lead, so you can look at how they perform versus each other, and of course the more detailed methodology there.
So Boris, I want to have time for questions. Can you give a very quick overview of neuromarketing, or actually do synthetic focus group?
Yeah, let's do it. So synthetic focus group, another tool that was built in a couple of days.
Boomer Gary, I like that.
I know. So the thing is, how do you know before you? There's a group of tools we call pre-campaign optimization tools. So that's one of them. So how do you know if a creative or concept you're about to launch, let's say $1 million campaign, will actually perform? Before that, you had to do a full focus group, gather people in, curate a group, ask the questions, curate the questions. This synthetic focus group tool does the following. It takes your personas that you define, build out those personas so you can actually ask the questions to them, and bombards them with a list of questions and creates the sentiment map across them for your product or concept or creative or landing page, with what specifically this persona would say or would not say, or recommend or not recommend about each concept you're evaluating, which is extremely helpful for smaller campaigns where you will never be able to afford a focus group for.
And these are things that a lot of people I've heard the initial feedback I would hear on this about a year ago. This concept was like, oh, how do you know the AI is just like not making it all up? It's like, well, at some level, AI is making everything up. But there have been academic studies on this that I think it's like 97% approximation of Likert ratings under particular constraints. And so I think someone referenced earlier is like, well, isn't this just connected to generic AI tools? It's like, well, yes, in the sense that every tool in the world that is used is connected to one of the leading frontier model APIs through Anthropic, through Google, through OpenAI, maybe through Grok, through xAI. What differentiates is not necessarily the model selection. That is becoming table stakes for really every tool. For instance, who is it? WPP Opens, their big AI tool, was one of the flagship use cases of the last Gemini model. And you have the Google DeepMind CEO coming out and saying, this is one of the most creative uses of our model we've seen. So it's not really the model that makes a difference. It's how you set up the system prompts. It's how you give it resources and context and instruction to be able to perform a particular task. And this is where people talk about human insight and domain expertise combining with AI to be able to produce things that are much better than what we see in the status quo. So for instance, for the AEO tool, having inbuilt guidance for the tool, not just letting it make stuff up, and restrictions so that there is no drift when something is scored and you come back and score it 3 times and it gives you, 7.5, 6.2. There need to be constraints, and those are not things that you can just connect and hope for the best and hope it works. So one of the questions I saw was, how do you work with agencies to do this? Like, well, each of these tools is built with our view of how, for instance, the best practices in AI optimization or AEO or GO, whatever you want to call it, or neuromarketing principles that go into color schemes, calls to actions, loss aversion, and other behavioral principles, or synthetic focus groups and how they should be constructed. But what makes this configuration unique is when we white label this for an agency and it's not just putting your skin and branding on it and color scheme. It's being able to adapt to put your own house view as additional logic on top of it without having to rebuild the whole logic of the app. You might say, oh, we believe X, Y, and Z about AEO, and we want our outputs to reflect that. Building in that way is making it so that things are configurable, actually custom, not just if 10 agencies use this, they'd all get the same things, and much more interesting, in my opinion. But I think we have about 10 minutes left, and rather than just cherry picking questions out of the chat, I'm happy to, well, I guess we should still probably do that so everyone's not speaking at once. But let me pop through and we'll move to the Q&A.
And is there anyone that hasn't had anything answered in the chat yet, especially that?
Someone asked an interesting question about how you measure. I think it was about the AEO tool, but it applies generally. Like, how do you measure some of these? Because these answers are a snapshot in time. How do you measure something longitudinally, as we talked about the importance of measuring? One of the AEO products I saw recently from HubSpot measures, so first takes us, I talked about how you break a prompt down into subqueries, and then it'll track how you perform on those subqueries. So imagine you're like, best car for my family, and what is it, and where should I get it? And it breaks it down into like, oh, I know from memory, David has a family of 4 and lives in blah, 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 and probably doesn't need a minivan yet, but maybe needs a bigger car, and how's his dog? Like, it knows some things, and it'll put them into these subqueries. And so you can track longitudinally those subqueries, and you're like, well, how do you perform month 1, month 2? Now, that's going to break down if you say, go the next day and change your tag on your website and be like, did it work? Things don't move that fast. But over time, you should be able to track on a horizon how these things evolve.
That is a very interesting thing to note as well. What we do is something, again, I haven't seen in other tools. We are measuring trained model versus grounded model. So there is a snapshot in time when the model was trained on the actual present data at that time. And then we look at how it searches right now. So the gap between them is what you did between those two timestamps. That is how you can see how the evolution looks for your brand over time. And for example, for established brands like Coca-Cola, you see there's like zero difference there. But when they are looking at the newer brands or changing brands, it could be staggering difference.
And Uli, I think your hand up or a question. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Uli.
No, Uli is perfect. That's better than most of the time. Thank you. Thank you for all the presentations. Very informative. I am wondering, I guess my question has 2 parts. I was very interested to learn about the synthetic focus group things. I'm just generally wondering, do you have a mechanism to stop the model to give out numbers when, in regimes where you feel is not going to be accurate? And then the related question is, if you happen to have that study, a link to that study about the Likert scale, I would love to learn more about the accuracy regimes of these synthetic models out of synthetic control groups out of FAN. But in general, the main question is I can't believe that it will get this sometimes right. I'm wondering what is your when do you tell the client maybe don't ask? Do you have a mechanism of stopping to give out numbers when you're not confident?
Yeah, I think that any tool Like I pour over the output of every one of these tools before I ever make a judgment based on them. And I think that is where it's like the same thing as if I treat AI like a human colleague, a very smart one, but it's like if I had 6 people that I thought were the absolute foremost experts in this in the room, and this is the answer they gave me, I still wouldn't go to my client and say, hey, here's what they said, and then have the client ask a question and I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I think it's really important to check everything quantitatively. Like we work a lot on the drift of those things. For example, if we ran that same query 5 times and it just gave you random scoring, like it will diverge a little bit, but we've tightened that range quite a bit. And Boris could talk about some of the mechanisms for that if you're interested. I will try to find that Likert rating paper and the study for it. I think it was an Ethan Mollick tweet, who's a professor at Wharton. Oh, I just found it. I'll put it in the chat. But that's one of several studies on the synthetic focus groups. And that particular one is not exactly on point, but it speaks to some of the same logic. The idea is like, I think when people ask about accuracy, they're not comparing to the right baseline. I dealt with this a lot in the legal field where we were doing contract analysis and folks would say, well, how do we know it's 100% accurate? It's like, well, I got news for you. If I went through 100,000 a year contracts in a week or in any time frame, I'd still probably be like 96% accurate because I'd make mistakes because I'm a human. And so that's the real baseline to measure against, is the performance that we have now. And if you think about that for a real focus group, like I've actually never done a real focus group, but I've seen movies about them. Maybe some of you have. You got your one-way glass and you look in the room and they're like, oh, this pen's really interesting, or this Twix bar, and here's what I think about it. It's like, are those people right in what they say? Are they a representative cross-section, those 20 people? Probably not. And at least based on the movies I think that seen, they say some pretty dumb things. And I don't know that brands take those at face value. They're just getting a sample of how a percentage of the population reacts. And at that, I think AI is quite effective because it's trained on most of the publicly available human knowledge that's out there.
I can say I ran a focus group for one of the biggest telcos in the world, and it was so weird. We went the other way, and the product was super successful. You can see it on the market now. So yeah, huh?
So thank you for the answer, is what I say.
Yeah. Someone made a good point. I think it was Marshall here, about like the difference between a hard number and a soft measure. Like when I say what gets measured gets managed too, it's like you're not going to have a perfect quantitative benchmark or evaluation or measure for everything you do with AI. But that is not license, in my opinion, to just abandon it and try not to measure. Like some of our clients, when we've spoken to them about how they should measure certain AI success, I've told them to track client AI wow moments. And they're like, well, what the heck does that mean? It's like, track every time you do something with AI or in conversation about AI where your client is just thrilled, and literally keep a tally of that, because regardless of that's the goal, right? To keep your clients thrilled and happy and retain them and grow those relationships. If AI is helping you do that, you're finding more of those, you're succeeding, and you should keep doing what you're doing. It gives you some signal. So not everything has to be, code or a tool or a benchmark.
And what we prefer in our tools is not just giving you a number, it's giving you action points. So you can actually go and implement right away.
I just put that link to the Likert ratings or semantic similarity elicitation study. Marshall asked a great question, which I intended to address earlier and failed to, which is, so how did, I guess this is kind of like a case study question, like how did agency work change because they used one of our tools, or in the case of white labeling them? So I'll give a real example that is from one of our tools, but try to make it less of an infomercial. Boris worked on a product with a client out of New York that is called Live Lead. It's a voice agent that basically the challenge in this case, or the kind of problem statement, is this client is obsessed with direct mail, likes to do a lot of outbound, but direct mail is not, we think, the most modern or best medium or whatever. Not we, the agency was saying this. And So what they wanted to do is find a way to get AI involved with that and see what their response rate was. And so we built this voice agent tool. And Boris, you could flash up maybe just the demo screen for a moment while I talk through this. Boris built this in a couple of weeks, still being kind of customized for the kind of production quality that it needs to go out to hundreds of thousands of people. But basically the idea is we get a creative asset that's interesting, not just like a branded QR code, but kind of that idea to get someone to scan or press a button or type in a domain, and it will open up to this type of screen. You'll click a button to start a conversation. And this works really well for considered purchases, like high consideration purchases. So a health plan, right? Someone might want to say like, without booking an appointment or doing anything, just hop on and be like, I don't really want to read through the details. What's the copay for a hospital visit or an urgent care visit? Is Dr. Bob Johnson in network? And this will actually answer the questions because it's built in their sales playbook and some of their resources. And so the idea from this is what you get is, Boris, can you pull up the transcript or the kind of what they get view, which is a transcript of every conversation. And the agent will ask, oh, what's your name, by the way? What's your phone number so we can follow up with some of the details, or what's your email? And so you'll get a call log that has the full call log with the duration, what types of questions they asked about, what they cared about. So at very least, even without getting the contact information, you are getting very clear brand signal about how people are reacting to your advertisement and to your product overall. And in the best case, you're getting their reasoning and what's holding them back from purchasing, or if they want to purchase, and their contact information. So in this case, we built this for the agency, and they went out, let's say they charge 20 cents a postcard. I have no idea what they charge for their direct mail. And then they charge another 15 cents, for example, for the voice agent. And they're keeping basically all of that as margin beyond cost. We're not making money off it. This is something we do as a function of partnership with some of these agencies. So if a couple folks asked how we work with people, we have a bunch of different models for doing so. But this was a great example of like going from idea to building a new revenue stream for an agency in a matter of a couple of weeks.
This is terrific. I know we've got folks who need to jump at the hour, and this has been a really bustling one. Appreciate all the research, all the demos. Afterwards, we'll make sure to send any info around how to access these tools, how to see more about the research, and how to connect with you all. Any just best way to connect with you for anyone who's on and has a follow-up question?
Yeah. If you want to email us at, here, I'll put my email in the chat. It's just david.mainiero@aidigital.com, or we have a form fill on the website as well. Anyone's welcome to reach out on LinkedIn, of course, as well. And Boris has his email address here as well. Love to hear from some of you.
Excellent. Well, look forward to all of you connecting further. And yeah, we'll be sharing this far and wide. So appreciate everyone taking the time, and of course the AI Digital team, but everyone else. It's just like, I just love the kinds of questions that are coming through, and I've got so many different kinds of practitioners in the room. So great to see and hear from all of you. And for the AI Digital folks, I look forward to seeing you at Architecture Live Chicago and all the other events we got coming up, and look forward to continuing to learn from you.